Good morning, and once again, welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. It's March the 14th, 2023, entering day 2 of the legal tampering period in the NFL. And we got a little bit of action yesterday. A couple deals announced, or not announced, rather. They were quote unquote agreed to. As we all know, pen cannot go to paper until tomorrow afternoon, but very, very rarely do these deals fall through between now and the time they can become officially official. So the one thing, John, that we're still waiting on, though, Mr. Aaron Rodgers, clock is ticking. Clock is ticking.
Tick, tick, tick.
Tick,
Yeah,
tick, tick.
exactly. And one reporter, I don't even know if he's a reporter. I mean, he worked at ESPN, really talented guy, but he's kind of stepped back a little bit. Trey Wingo tweeted out yesterday that done deal, Rodgers to the Jets, but he had no real specifics on that. Schefter didn't report it. Rappaport didn't report it. So I guess if those guys don't report it, it really never happened. But there's nothing official with Aaron Rodgers. Again, like you said, Ian, nothing can really be official till tomorrow. But as you said, when these deals are made, they go through. But this is Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers. I believe he's going to be on McAfee today. Does he announce it on that? Does he wait till tomorrow when it would be official? Does he do it on the Ides of March, which, I've been pushing that theory. But it's just being Aaron Rodgers, right? Because he's a drama king. And, I think the whole thing with him is he was not recruited coming out of high school. Went to Butte Junior College. Then went to Cal. Was supposed to be the first overall pick in the 2005 NFL draft. Instead, he went 24th. And we just remember him stewing that night because he wasn't being selected. So this is his time to be in control of the situation. Although he's not totally in control because Green Bay and the Jets still have to work out details of a trade. But he's doing what he normally does, which is he's going to string this along. He loves attention, which leads me to believe he's not going to retire because if he retires, what's the platform he can be on where he'll get as much attention as being the quarterback of the Jets or the Packers or whoever?
Well, and look, I mean, going back to your comment about Trey Wingo, and as much as, sometimes these athletes have their guys, and I feel like maybe I'm misremembering this, but I feel like in the past, Trey Wingo's kind of been one of his guys. So, that's certainly in the realm of possibility for him to tell him and only him and just be like, hey, throw it out there and let people stew. And, eventually this thing's going to get announced because you gotta figure that Aaron Rodgers already kind of knows what's going to happen. I mean, I don't think he's still undecided at this point. I think, to your point, I think he's kind of just toying with us a little bit, which is fine. Which, again, I mean, go for it. Be the villain. I like the commitment to just being that, and you're going to piss people off, and that's fine. There's going to be a lot of comparisons to Brett Favre, and look, they already exist. I mean, they existed before he is going to end up eventually going to the Jets, which, again, it's funny how these things work out, where it's like, they spend almost identical amount of time as a starter, pretty much achieve just about the same, have the same question marks surrounding them around their exit, and they go to the same team immediately following their tenure with Green Bay. It's pretty fascinating. But I mean, look, I think we all believe this deal is eventually going to get done. He's going to announce that he wants to play, and therefore he'll end up with New York. And look, we saw this morning, or at least I saw this morning, that apparently the Jets are working to sign Allen Lazard, which, again, I mean, okay, we get it. You have Aaron Rodgers set up to arrive there. We get why you're trying to sign Allen Lazard. There's a reason why the Jets have not been connected to any other quarterback, John, so far. I mean, there was rumblings, obviously, earlier in the offseason because every team that needed a quarterback was connected to everyone. But, seriously, think about it. There has not been one recent link to the Jets and any other quarterback. And at this point, where they're desperate need of a quarterback, that has to tell you that they know the deal is going to get done. Green Bay knows the deal is going to get done. And Aaron Rodgers knows the deal is going to get done. It's just a matter of, well, when does it happen? And I think it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, I mean, Allen Lazard would be nice bait because they have a good relationship. It was his favorite receiver last year. Maybe Randall Cobb, who's older than I am, and I'm going to be 60 next month, will be the next ex-Packer to join the Jets. I mean, is there potential for David Bakhtiari, who has been one of the best left tackles in football, but had that knee injury a couple of seasons ago. Has never been the same. Maybe there's some sort of mechanism to get him as his left tackle with the Jets. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen. I always remember, this is going to be cross-sport reference, which I love doing anyway, so let's do it. But Manny Ramirez, when he was a free agent and he signed with the Red Sox, the big holdup was he wanted to bring his own batting practice pitcher. And he was going to be paid $50,000 a year. And I remember Dan Duquette, because they kind of did a mini documentary on the signing of Manny Ramirez, and was like, that's the holdup right now, is that Manny wants his own batting practice pitcher. It's like, okay, just do it. Like, that's going to finalize the deal. Let's do it. And Ramirez is kind of like Aaron Rodgers. They're somewhat eccentric and pains in the butt, but wildly talented. So you put up with whatever nonsense you have to deal with. But I think it's going to happen. The only thing is, maybe Aaron Rodgers, when he met Woody Johnson, maybe they didn't hit it off because Woody Johnson's company developed the vaccine, and maybe Aaron's, so much of an anti-vaxxer that he was turned off by the meeting. Who knows?
Well,
anything is possible with him, right?
Well, like I said, I think, look, at this point, I think the way Aaron Rodgers is acting, the way these other, everything, it's going to get done. It's just, like I said, I don't know if there's a small hang up or just a matter of timing. Maybe you're right. Maybe he does want to make some big announcement today on the Pat McAfee show. You never know. That would be very Aaron Rodgers like, and certainly, he seems like a guy who will throw his guys a bone, and obviously him and Pat McAfee obviously have a good relationship because, well, he's constantly on the show every week. So, but anyways,
that's paid. I'm assuming he gets paid for those appearances.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, obviously these weekly appearances are likely sponsored in some form or fashion, but you still I feel like he has opened up a little bit more, obviously, on that show than anything. So maybe today's the day, John. I know you're going to be sitting there watching, glued to your TV. So, waiting for that announcement. So, anyways, Jimmy G heading to Las Vegas. So it's really not that surprising, especially when Brady announced his retirement. There was really no other option for the Raiders. I mean, really, what were they going to do? Go out and get Jameis Winston? No, it's pretty much Jimmy G or bust at that point, or you're rolling with Jarrett Stidham, who happened to sign with, where'd he go? He signed somewhere yesterday. I don't even know. He went
with Denver.
Denver, right. Yeah.
Mike White with Miami, 2 years, potentially $16 million. Good for them getting those types of contracts. As clearly backup quarterbacks. But yeah, Jimmy G going to Vegas, which is perfect, right? That's the perfect city for Jimmy G. Light it up there. I tweeted out earlier that Jimmy G, obviously not the most durable of all quarterbacks. He's only made 63 of his potential starts as an NFL quarterback, which is more like a superstar NBA player. That's not what you want from your quarterback. You want him making pretty much every start that he's supposed to. But in odd-numbered years, Jimmy G has been durable. He's made 95% of his potential starts in odd-numbered years, while in even-numbered years, he's only made 40% of his potential starts. So last time I checked, it's going to be 2023 in September. It is already, but the 2023 season. So, the Ravens can count on Jimmy G being out there for most of the games, and good for him. He's got some good weapons there, good relationship with Josh McDaniels. So, maybe he can reinvent himself. But he got a pretty good deal, right? 3 years, $67.5 million with half of it guaranteed. Good for Jimmy G. And
hey,
look out, ladies in Vegas. There's Jimmy G coming to town.
Well, look, the thing is, everything being equal, both players being healthy and all that nonsense, I think Jimmy G is a better quarterback than Derek Carr. You can't explain it. He knows how to win. Again, I think their peaks are about the same. I think their valleys are about the same, but I think Jimmy G is more consistent play-wise and a better decision maker. Obviously, the health is the big factor. So, this is going to be an interesting situation for the Raiders. I do think that they are better, again, with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo than with Derek Carr. And I do think the Raiders have a nice group of receivers, running backs, and a tight end that can really, play to Jimmy Garoppolo's strengths. And of course, you can't discount the connection between Josh McDaniels and Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, there's a working relationship there. Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh were together in New England when he was drafted. And really, if you think about it, in Josh McDaniels' very short time as a head coach in the NFL, this is probably the first time he's going to have one of his guys as the quarterback. You know what I mean? He went into Denver with Jay Cutler, a situation that, we've talked about Jay Cutler, all the talent in the world. Just we know too much about the quarterback position now to know that Jay Cutler was never going to win, quote unquote, in the NFL. So whether you want to fault Josh McDaniels for that or not, by all means, he deserves a lot of criticism for his time in Denver. But, kind of the same thing repeated itself. He got stuck with Derek Carr in his first year, and it's like he realized and saw what everyone else saw, or I hope everyone else sees, and that is Derek Carr is a nice quarterback. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr, and sometimes that Band-Aid is tough to rip off right off the bat. But I think Josh McDaniels has done that. And look, I mean, he's not Tom Brady, but Jimmy Garoppolo's brought the 49ers to a Super Bowl. He's consistent. Again, is he going to be the difference in whether or not you win a Super Bowl? Not necessarily. You're going to need to elevate everything with your defense and your offensive playmakers and all that stuff. But he is a guy you can certainly help navigate to a Super Bowl. And I think that's what the Raiders are looking for right now. And really, I mean, you're not going to get much better than Jimmy Garoppolo right now. I mean, we've talked about the Lamar Jackson thing to death. I mean, you're not going to trade for Lamar Jackson. Not many teams can or will be willing to take that risk. Outside of that, Aaron Rodgers wasn't coming to Las Vegas. Your other options? Nothing. So, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo is a pretty big signing for the Raiders, and I think their best option for 2023.
Yeah, and the comparison with Carr is an interesting one. I think the difference between the two quarterbacks, I mean, Carr is more durable than Jimmy G, but then again, so are most quarterbacks. But the thing with Jimmy G is his teammates love him. Like, he's that guy. I think he's got those intangibles that you look for in a quarterback. I mean, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. I mean, they just spoke glowingly of the guy. It just seemed like every player liked him, but Kyle Shanahan didn't. But then again, Kyle Shanahan seems to be a guy that never likes his quarterback because he thinks it's all about him, that he makes the quarterback. But Derek Carr, I don't get that connection with his teammates, right? I just remember back, I think it was in 2017, the Raiders are playing a Sunday night game in Washington, and it was all during the Kaepernick story, and he didn't seem to connect with his teammates.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was away from them. So, your quarterback has to be your leader, and I think Garoppolo's got really good leadership tendencies. He's kind of like the cool guy, like, everybody kind of likes and gravitates to, where Carr isn't.
And kind of to that point, too, from Jimmy G's perspective, this might be the first time in several seasons where he's comfortable where he's at, where he's not feeling like he's getting pushed out. Because if you think about it, the last, 3 years, essentially, it's been like, well, who's the replacement for Jimmy Garoppolo? And then it's like they had no other option but to start Jimmy Garoppolo. And yet he still came in and won football games for him. So just like the start of this season, all of a sudden it's like, well, Trey Lance. Well, who is Trey Lance? No one knows. You had to go to Jimmy Garoppolo. And guess what? You go to Jimmy Garoppolo, you start winning football games again. Voila. So, for the first time in his most recent history, he's going to a team where he knows the coach wants him there. I mean, obviously Josh McDaniels wants him there. And excuse me, to your point, like I think Derek Carr can be very alienating. I think the religious angle may or may not be a factor, because I know he's super religious, and I know that's not always a factor with every player. Obviously, Drew Brees was the same way, and players gravitated towards him. But I think it does play a role in his personality and how he, how he acts, and how maybe he can't connect with just about every teammate. And to your point, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is just kind of like the cool guy that comes in, hey, I've been around the block some time. I think he's relaxed around his teammates, and I think that means a lot. Now, again, that means nothing at the end of the day if he can't, produce. I do think he's going to be able to produce when he's healthy, if he's healthy, and that's really, John, the biggest factor in all of this. Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be healthy? Now, if he is, it doesn't mean they're the best team in the AFC West, but they're a team that can compete in the AFC, and I think certainly have a better shot moving forward. They still have to fix the defense, because that's one thing Jimmy Garoppolo's not going to have that he had in San Francisco, and that is a solid defense to support him. But I do think that this team can make some noise if Jimmy Garoppolo comes in healthy, and then you have guys like Devontae Adams to throw to and Josh Jacobs to run behind, and Darren Waller at the tight end position. So fascinating, interested, not that surprising, but very intriguing move by the Raiders.
And also, you got to factor in that Josh McDaniels has a lot of pressure on him this year. Another 6-11 or 7-10 type season, he's gone. Right, they'll move on from him, and he took over a kind of interesting situation. We talked about it all last offseason. The Raiders went 10-7 the year before, made the playoffs, but they were outscored, outgained. They won a lot of close, weird games. That's not the best situation you want to take over because things have a tendency of going back to the norm the following season. That's why I think like the Minnesota Vikings, who were 13-4 in 2022, will probably go like 9-8 next season because they won a lot of strange games. So McDaniels is taking over what is technically a playoff team, although it's really not. And you knew they were going to regress at some point. So there's your first year. So there's pressure on him. And now he's got a quarterback that I think he trusts and that can win now. I don't think the Raiders would be in a situation where let's take a risk and maybe draft a quarterback and see if he can ignite the franchise right from the get-go. Maybe they do take a quarterback and groom him for a couple of years behind Jimmy G. Although I think, again, if you're in a must-win situation now, you want to use that 7th overall pick for an impact player this year. Yeah. You don't want to have a guy with the 7th overall pick holding a clipboard for 2 years because you'll probably be gone at that point. So, yeah, I think it's a good move for the Raiders, good move for Jimmy G. And I'm a big uniform guy. I think he's going to look really good in that black and silver uniform.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you can't discount the fact that as great as Deebo Samuel is, no one's doubting that. He hasn't had a wide receiver like Devontae Adams in his career. So I'll be fascinating to see. I mean, the closest thing to that would be George Kittle, right? Big-bodied wide receiver who can catch in the middle of the field. Well, Devontae Adams can do that and a whole hell of a lot more. And it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out, how that connection plays out. Because I think, Devontae Adams is the type of guy who can, how not every wide receiver or quarterback can mesh with one another. Despite the talent, sometimes it just doesn't work. I feel like Devontae Adams is that guy who can just mesh with anyone. Like he can go in and elevate a subpar quarterback. He can go in and, immediately connect with the veteran superstar quarterback. And I think that's one of the advantages Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have now that he's never had in his career to this point. I mean, he's had some good talent around him. Don't get me wrong. And he still has that now with the Raiders, but Devontae Adams is just a little bit different. So, so I'll ask you, John, of all the moves that were made yesterday, and I should probably, I meant to check this. I wanted to kind of see what has happened while we've been talking the last 20 minutes or so. But of all the moves yesterday, is any other series of moves, any team stuck out to you?
Kansas City always seems to do the right thing, right? So they always are focused on that offensive line because those are the 5 guys they're going to have to protect Patrick Mahomes, the franchise quarterback, a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. And they made the proper move. They're not going to keep Orlando Brown. They're going to move on from him. And they brought the tackle in from Jacksonville, who's only 25 years old. So they see that they're going to get an upgrade there. So the Chiefs always seem to make the right move. I think the Bears, who have a ton of money in terms of free agency spending with Tremaine Edmonds, the fine linebacker from Buffalo. So they raid Bills and get a kind of an impact type defensive player who is still so young. So I'd say the Bears adding Edmonds and the Chiefs making that move at offensive tackle. Good moves there. Denver also getting Mike McGlinchey as a right tackle. The money gets crazy because the salary cap continues to go up and up and up, and players are getting good contracts and good for them. But I would say those were some of the more interesting moves yesterday.
Yeah, and look, I was actually kind of surprised that the Patriots held on to Jonathan Jones.
Me too.
That was and at a very reasonable price too. I mean, they essentially got Jonathan Jones for what Taylor Heineke got this morning for a backup quarterback position. So that was a bit surprising because I think we kind of convinced ourselves that he was likely a candidate to go because he's a very talented cornerback. And if there's one thing that the Patriots do well, it's draft and sign and develop defensive backs, and that's been kind of true the last decade or so, which makes it seem like that period of time post Ty Law and pre Aqib Talib / Darrell Revis was a lifetime ago, because that was a very, very poor era. Aside from, of course, Devin McCourty, who was obviously drafted as a cornerback, played very well his rookie year, but was moved to safety the following year. So surprised to see that. I was happy to see that. Obviously the Patriots right now are, it's interesting. I don't know necessarily. I'm not going to make any judgments on their off season or their upcoming season one way or the other, because, well, it's March 14th, John. It's like, come on, people. We go through this every single year. You have no idea who's going to be. I mean, look, the Chargers won the offseason last year, right? Wasn't it? The Chargers came in and swung big. They signed all these players, and you're like, oh my God, this Chargers team is going to be unstoppable, except that they're still the Chargers, and they just did what the Chargers do, and they underperformed. So, all this stuff is good and well. Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, obviously that's going to make them a better team, because, well, any quarterback aside from Zach Wilson is going to make them a better team. The Bills, I think, are, and this is something that we've talked about for the, heading into last season. The window for Buffalo isn't as big as what their fans thought. And I think very easily you could talk about it being closed already. Miami, I think, has gotten better with Jalen Ramsey. I don't think he's going to be as good as people think he is, but I still think their progression in year 2 under Mike McDaniel, and I think they're going to be more competitive. I think the gap between Buffalo and those other teams in that division isn't as big as it was previously. And then you have other teams in the AFC, obviously Kansas City, obviously, other teams like Las Vegas. And I know we just kind of junked on Los Angeles, but the Chargers are still there. I mean, the Ravens, who knows what's going to happen with them. I think Pittsburgh's getting better. If they get better than mediocre quarterback play this season, they're going to be a team that's going to be in the mix for a playoff spot. So Buffalo, look, they went through this in the 90s. Sometimes you have your opportunity and you just don't take advantage of it. And look, maybe that's a little harsh for a team who went to 4 straight Super Bowls, but I think that's a little bit more true now during this era of Buffalo Bills football, where, I think we've hit that peak in the hype for the Bills, and I think we're on the downswing now. So now the pressure is really on them to actually win, because it's not going to get much better than what they've had the last couple of years.
Hot take on March 14th. Mark it down. The Bills will not win the AFC East in 2023, especially if Aaron Rodgers ends up with the Jets. Either the Jets or Miami will win that division. They've made the proper moves in the offseason. They're closing the gap. And I agree 100% with you, Ian. The window may be closing on the Buffalo Bills. It was their year last year. They were supposed to win the Super Bowl, and they came up short, miserably short in the divisional round. I mean, they were manhandled by the Bengals 27-10. Heck, let's not forget, in the wild card round, they barely beat, I think, a pretty solid, not great Miami team by a field goal. So I think, that there's a lot of pressure on them. I think Sean McDermott's going to be on the hot seat. He's got all this talent, which he's now starting to lose, right? Jordan Poyer's probably going to sign elsewhere. The fine free safety. Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker we talked about, is now a Bear. They don't have a running game. They've never really created a running game. The running game is Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Like, are they going to go out and get Derrick Henry? And if they do, that's a big splash move. What does he have left? Their offensive line isn't all that great. And they, other than Stephon Diggs, have a mediocre group of pass catchers. So, yeah, I think that the Bills will not win the AFC East this year. That's the hot take.
Yeah, and look, I think that's not going to be as hot of a take as we move forward in this offseason. I think you're ahead of the curve there for sure, but
I always am.
Of course. Sometimes not, on purpose though. That was, sometimes just you get led astray, and it just so happens you land in the right. A broken clock is right twice a.
Hey, that's day, my one. So. Don't steal that one. That's my move.
That's my move. I stopped short. Speaking of stop short, I stopped short in ever changing my kitchen clock. So now it is back actually working on time. So for 6 months, I was always an hour ahead. But now with the time change, I am back to normal, because I was just too lazy to get up there and change the clock. So I lived with it.
Lord, that's not good.
Well, look, after a few months, you're just like, what the hell do I care? Eventually it'll be right. And guess what? It's going to be right between now and whenever the hell it changes again.
October,
October,
or early
yeah,
November.
whatever it is. So
you're like Belichick, who couldn't fix his clock in his car. Remember, in
no, I could
football
fix
life
it
when he was trying to figure that out.
I could fix it. Don't get me wrong, I could fix it. I just chose not to. Yeah, well, I mean,
you are Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's done the same thing. In fact, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have clocks in his house.
No, of course not. Of course not. I don't think he believes in clocks.
No,
certainly not play clocks, because sometimes that can come back to haunt him. So, yeah, you set me up for that one. So,
I did.
Anyways, I think this is almost like my George Costanza moment where I should just, like, you know what? Let's just end it now because it can't get much better than that. But the reality of it is we're looking at day 2 now as potentially, John, a wide receiver day, ? Not a single wide receiver signed yesterday. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. is one of the bigger ones on the market. Is that market waiting for the Aaron Rodgers thing to work out? Maybe it is.
That makes sense, right? Yeah.
It could. Look, I don't think it's completely all because of Aaron Rodgers, but I think that might be a factor for, say, a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. Maybe he's getting interest from a few teams, one of which might be the Jets. Well, are the Jets going to get Aaron Rodgers, a guy that he's wanted to play with for a while? Sure. If they go and get Aaron Rodgers, well, Odell Beckham Jr. is like, well, okay, New York, what can you offer me? And the idea of going back to New York, not with the Giants, kind of makes a lot of sense, right? You go and you go to a familiar place, ironically in New Jersey, not New York, but whatever. That's a discussion for the offseason, later in the offseason. But the quote unquote New York Jets, I like kind of taking that little shiv and stabbing those New York fans with it. I know that was a little graphic, but you know what I mean. Like, hey, New York, hey, you're technically in New Jersey. Why don't you call yourself the New Jersey Jets? All right. But anyways, I'm rambling on about stupid things. Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets. All of a sudden, Odell Beckham Jr. is like, you know what? I want to go sign with the New York Jets. And it's very possible because, again, like I said, those two have had a connection. He's wanted to play with them. I think it almost happened at one point in Green Bay, but it just didn't work out. Now you have an opportunity to do it on a big stage in New York. Not that the Jets are a big stage, but just the idea of playing in New York is a big stage. So yeah, maybe that starts to kind of unravel a little bit today. And look, I mean, obviously a guy like, personally, we're keeping an eye on Jacoby Myers. What is he going to get? Because, there hasn't been really a signing in the wide receiver market, but it's really not a great market for players. Outside of Odell Beckham Jr., who has the injury caveat and the age caveat, Jacoby Myers is probably the best wide receiver available. And I think a lot of teams are going to be searching for wide receivers. So I think those guys are going to get overpaid. Certainly not, equal to their talent, outside of maybe Jacoby Myers. But like some of these other guys are going to get overpaid. And, it's really a matter of, well, who gets the luckiest and actually find someone that comes close to their worth.
The thing about the wide receivers now, I don't know if you'll see really top flight wide receivers become free agents, because teams at some point will just say, we'll trade them. We're not going to re-sign them. Let's get some value back. We saw that last offseason, right, with Devontae Adams going from Green Bay to the Raiders, A.J. Brown from Tennessee to Philadelphia, Tyreek Hill from Kansas City to Miami. So trade these guys a year before their contract's up to get something back in return. Because, look, growing up, wide receivers weren't as important as they are now. Heck, 10 years ago, they weren't as important as they are now. When you're building a team, other than quarterback, the four most important positions to me are wide receiver, left tackle, edge rusher, and cornerback. Those are the four slots you have to fill, right? It's like having a starting rotation in baseball and a great shortstop or whatever. Those are the ones you need. So the wide receivers value is through the roof. So they trade them off now to the point where Jacoby Myers is the top-ranked free agent wide receiver. Love the player. Sensational story, but, I mean, he's not a game changer. The guy who can come in and will help your offense for sure, and he may get $15 million a year. And, again, good for him. Get every dollar you can. But you're right. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. The top free agent may end up being Odell Beckham Jr., like you said, Ian, and here's a guy who didn't play all of last year and has had 2 major knee surgeries that he's trying to recover from.
And as Joel points out, OBJ wants reportedly $20 million a year. And I think I think the market for wide receivers is so depressed. I think you'll get it. And look, maybe it is a team like New York because look, if you're the Jets, and you're going through all this hassle to go and get Aaron Rodgers, you are not going to scoff at paying Odell Beckham Jr. $20 million a year because I don't imagine it's going to be a long contract, maybe a couple of years, and maybe you live with
Mm-hmm.
terrible production in that final year. But the point being is you're taking a shot now. This isn't for and to your point about like the draft pick thing and everything like that. Like that, you're not gonna waste a first round draft pick on a guy who's gonna carry a clipboard. You want to find a playmaker because well you want to win right now, and your window to win is right now. And as we just talked about, I think the Bills are vulnerable. I don't think they're any sure thing to win the division. You're going as far as saying they're not going to win the division. So, yeah, if you're Miami, are you going to pay Odell Beckham Jr. $20 million a year? Sure, especially if it makes Aaron Rodgers happy. And again, I keep going back to the fact that they've wanted to play with each other for a while. So, what the hell? Why not swing for the fences? If not, you got a lot of merchandise you can sell.
Yeah, you're building a brand new house. You're putting a lot of money into your kitchen, and then you decide to cheap out on the cabinets or the microwave or the refrigerator. I mean, go all in at that point. Yeah, go get Odell Beckham Jr. Look, if you have Odell Beckham Jr., Garrett Wilson, and Alan Lazard as your three wide receivers, that's pretty good. That should make Aaron Rodgers very happy.
Not to mention their running backs.
Oh, Breece Hall's a stud, right? And he's probably going to be offensive rookie of the year if he didn't get hurt midway through the season. So, yeah, and they just have to address that offensive line, which, again, kind of do that in the draft and maybe add a free agent.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes the offensive line can be upgraded by coaching.
Oh, sure.
The Patriots, right? Dante Scarnecchia could take me, you, and three other guys and make us play pretty well. Last year, not so much. Matt Patricia coaching that offensive line. So, yeah, that can be a big part of it as well.
Yeah, so I'll be, you gotta assume that this is going to play out today, tomorrow, in the next couple of days, because I can't imagine it's going to be too much longer before these dominoes start to fall and kind of take shape. Because again, you also want to have your ducks in a row with a decent amount of time before the NFL draft. And you know what? The NFL draft's coming up in 6 weeks, and the Jets again. They're in a position where they can realistically contend if they make the right moves. And I think they want to get that settled now and kind of start working towards planning for the on-field product and not necessarily what we can potentially do in the off season. So obviously we will be keeping an eye on that. And just real quick note, Shaq Mason just got traded to the Houston Texans from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So former Patriot, now former Buck. Yeah, a little move, good move for the Texans. They're a bad team. You want to get good players and help build that. So, but anyways, we will be back probably on Thursday to kind of recap and see what happens tomorrow. Keep an eye on the Full Press NFL podcast if for any sort of live updates. And it should be a fun couple days, and we're going to look forward to breaking it down some more on Thursday. And hopefully, John. Hopefully, we will be talking about Aaron Rodgers officially a New York Jet. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you later.